Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Why don't we, any objection, we'll await the pledge until the public hearing and get right into the order of business. Okay. The first matter on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Cindy, which date are we talking about here?
I'm sorry?
April 1st.
Is it just the April 1st minutes?
Yeah.
Take a motion to
Minutes from
approve.
the minutes from the last meeting.
Yes. There's been a motion to approve. I was just simply going to ask if there was any objection, but we can take a formal motion if you'd like. I do want to, it was brought to my attention that there's a slight correction in the minutes based on the time that Mr. Raposa left the last meeting.
He left the meeting, and I incorrectly included him in votes that occurred after he left. So
Okay.
I will correct that in the minutes.
Okay, and I also have a memorandum from the chair noting that he's not here, so he can't vote on them, but he did want to object to an item, and so we'll just keep that in the record, but he's not here to vote anyway. So does anybody present have any objection to the minutes?
I have an objection to the last paragraph.
So it'd be helpful if I had it. That whole paragraph. Okay.
And the objection is that
go ahead.
happened after the adjournment of the meeting, and it shouldn't be in the minutes of the meeting.
I read the statement at the meeting, and what I read occurred at the April 1st meeting.
That was after we adjourned.
I was in the middle of this. I know that half the body had sort of gotten up and started to move around, and I know that the statement was read. Is it? Can we resolve this by agreeing that it was presented in writing on the official record or submitted to the chair? And does it matter whether it was before or after we adjourned?
It does, yes. I read it at the meeting, during the meeting, before adjournment, yes.
I don't believe so.
At the
How
chair's,
did he
at the
approach-
chair's request that it be
How did he
deferred until
approach you?
after the business.
How did he approach you? Were we adjourned already when he approached you? Did he approach you?
Dave, no objection was made when I read the meeting,
We didn't take a vote.
when I read the statement.
We didn't take a
I
vote.
read the statement at
Oh,
the April 1st meeting before adjournment.
Maybe I can help.
At the chair's request that I do it at the end of the meeting and not at the beginning.
Dave, can I just see that paragraph again? Of the minutes, the last page? I know I have them here in front of me, but I just can't. Okay, Dave, is your concern about where it says immediately after in the statement itself or up here?
Where it says immediately after the adjournment, he approached it. So
Okay.
we adjourned already. He approached it after the adjournment. It has nothing to do with the meeting.
Okay, perhaps I can resolve this on the grounds that it does not matter because what that paragraph is what the statement says, and all the minutes are reflecting is what the statement says. So we actually don't even need to resolve whether the comments that are reflected in the statement occurred before or after the meeting. All that we need to reflect is that a member of the committee expressed a concern formally and that statement was put on the record. So I'm hoping that we can resolve. We're not adjudicating when that was actually said. We're just stating that in these minutes, that was when the member presented it to the committee. Does that help?
Still don't believe they should be in the meeting notes.
Is it just me, or is it, I can't hear what's being said?
Okay. I object. Did you get the minutes?
Yes,
You received the minutes?
yes.
I objected to the last paragraph in the minutes because it happened after the meeting
Is everybody
adjourned.
here?
No, it's. I didn't bring it with me, but,
There you go.
Ray down at the end?
Dave's here. It's nice to see him.
So you're saying that the statement isn't properly reflected here, because it shows that the
Well,
meeting was adjourned after the statement was made?
Absolutely.
Was made before the statement, after the statement?
After we adjourned. We adjourned, and then a statement was made.
Maybe that's
Has
why
nothing
the
to do with the
curtain's
meeting.
closed, because that helps the acoustics.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not so much about what the statement says. What these minutes say is that on April 1st, a member of the committee submitted a statement, and that these minutes reflect what that statement is. So we don't have to get into,
There are a lot of things that are said after the meetings. Nobody puts them into the minutes.
I don't think Dave understands.
well, you're certainly welcome to. I mean, especially if they relate to conduct that occurred during the meeting. I mean, I believe the allegation here is that there was a comment made directly relevant to what was discussed in the meeting. Is that fair to say?
I think that was a question.
Yes,
It's
it
difficult to hear
was
down here.
directly relevant to what was stated in the meeting, yes.
Okay, my kind of view on minutes here is that minutes are meant to be as broad as possible. If we would like to take a vote on these minutes, then we will vote on the minutes, but we will allow any dissenting statements to be part of the official record. So, Dave, if you'd like, we can move.
Yeah, let's move it.
We can
so
move
we'll
this.
stay on here all night.
You made a motion.
I believe Dan had moved approval of these minutes. Do I have a second to approving these minutes?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as distributed, please raise your hand.
So we have, I'll
that's-
accept Alex and
And Dave?
Dave.
And all those opposed? So,
Is Alex abstaining or
I'm
voting
sorry, were you
nay?
abstaining or voting in the nay? I'm sorry, Alex was abstaining, so that would be
And-
5-1-0
And Dave is voting nay.
to not approve the minutes as
Thank you.
stated.
Thank you.
Although I would like, Dave, this is your call, but if this were me, I would ask that your objection be noted in the minutes of this meeting. And if that's not the case, then you should submit a dissenting statement so that it can be part of the record of the committee.
Okay,
Does that seem fair?
that's good.
Okay, thank you. Okay. One down. Next on the agenda is discussion and a potential vote pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 44-5-2. I would like to ask the committee if it has any objection to hear the distribution of the chairman's report first. I think that might make a lot of sense. Is there any objection to taking item 3 out of order?
Nope.
Hearing no objection, what has been distributed to you is the chairman's report. For those in the audience,
Where's the chairman's report?
oh, I'm sorry. It's an Arial font 2-page document that says summary of meeting, participants, treasurer, town administrator, and budget committee chairman. Does everybody have that?
No.
No, he's gonna leave it around. I got it here. This summer.
Why is that? Wait a minute. I got it.
Yep.
Sorry. Got it. Something else. Okay.
Okay. Jeff couldn't be here. He had a pretty serious operation from a close family member. Has gone well, and we're cautiously optimistic. So here we are, and here I am. But he has asked that this chairman's report be sent out, and I think that this is a proper time for me to try to, as best as I can, advise the committee of what has happened since our last meeting, which relates to his report. So while you're reading this, this is Chairman Karen's statement about a meeting that was held on Friday, April 16th, with himself, the treasurer, and the town administrator, and our secretary, I believe, was present at least part of that meeting. This committee last met on Thursday, April 1st, and we voted to give the chair the usual authority to round off zeros and whatnot, and also to accept numbers that were sent from the town council and the town administrator, as well as the school committee, right up to the very last day of the deadline, the 30-day deadline. And those final numbers did come in on April 7th, and the docket does reflect the last submitted numbers. I believe the town council met that Monday and the school committee met that Tuesday, and they came over that Wednesday morning. On April 12th, the town council had a meeting, and at that meeting there was discussion about having a three-way meeting between the treasurer, the administrator, and the budget committee chairman. That is not a standing assembly or anything like that, but just basically an ad hoc meeting. That meeting occurred on Friday, April 16th, and the concept of that was to try to review the issues of exceeding the property tax levy cap. So the chairman's report is reporting his view on that meeting, and he wanted to make sure that I distributed that to the committee. And I'll be coming back to that content in a moment. So on April 19th, the town administrator sent to the State of Rhode Island Division of Municipal Finance a request, not for a waiver as such, but a request for eligibility from the state. The town council had another meeting on April 26th, and we're here today. So again, that report is from the Friday, April 16th meeting, but I wanted to give you the context of how that came about. Is there any questions on that before I move on to the next item, which is closely related? Okay. So as I'm sure that people are familiar with, the issue of where we're going with the budgets and the tax levy cap is of interesting importance. And so what is going on is that this committee came in, as we all know, underneath the statutory tax cap of 4.5%. Those final numbers of the town council on that Monday after we had our last meeting did not get their request underneath the cap. And it's certainly with the school committee, there is some debate about whether the school committee itself is underneath the statutory cap, but there is no debate on the concept that when you add the town council's budget and the school committee's budget, that the two together are certainly over the cap. So this has set up a dilemma where the budget committee is under the cap, but the requested budgets of the school committee and the town council together are over the cap. And here we are on how to resolve this. I spoke with the the new chief of the Division of Municipal Finance this afternoon. The prior chief resigned, I believe, 2 months ago, and the acting chief in the interim had preferred not to resolve this until the new chief had arrived. The new chief arrived Monday. I talked to her today and asked her what I should report out to this committee since there is much debate on this. To my knowledge, there has not been a situation like this where there has been the budget committee is under the cap, the other budgets are not, and certainly this request for a certification that is not a request for a waiver. There's also the issue of in this town where the town council does not review the school committee's budget, but this body does, who might be the governing body. So the chief told me that she had already been contacted about this issue by Louise Durfee from the town council. Actually, I don't know if that was in her individual capacity or in her official capacity, but she'd been contacted by Louise Durfee and also the town administrator, and she told me that she would be trying to set up a joint meeting between at least the officers of the town council, the budget committee, as well as the town administrator. I encouraged her to hold that meeting next week if we could do that before the FTM. She could not guarantee that. It's her third day on the job. But I do want to advise the committee of that, because we really do not have guidance from the state, and we do not have a policy from the town council on how to handle this situation. Having said that, the documents that I have sent out to or distributed to this committee for your consideration is what should we do about this? We have our budget is underneath the cap. The town council and the school committee are over the cap. They have requested some type of eligibility to determine if the town can exceed the cap if the FTM electors so approve. In the normal situation, there would be a formal request for a waiver well in advance. The state would come back like they did in 2008 and give us that certification ahead of time. And then there is debate about whether this body or the town council or anybody would have to take a supermajority vote before sending the budget to the electors of the financial town meeting. So I've been talking to the chairman, and here I am to try to present this issue to you. And what I've sent out is a copy of section 44-5-2, which is the cause of all this trouble. We have a copy of a letter from May 1st, 2008, which is obviously not relevant to this budget cycle other than to say that it states the requirement for a 4/5 vote by the governing body. We have the year-end report from the Division of Municipal Finance that state that there is disagreement in the interpretation about whether the town council or the budget committee would take a 4/5 vote. We have a sample letter approving a cap exemption, which again would require a 4/5 vote by a governing body, but does not say who the governing body is. And finally, what I have here is, so the conversation then is, well, what, if anything, should this committee do in this situation? And one of the concepts that the chair asked me to convey is whether this body should take this vote right now. But I do not think that we know for sure that we are the governing body. So what I have drafted for your consideration is a motion that would state, to the extent that we are the Tiverton Budget Committee, that we would approve by supermajority vote an excess levy if and only if such an excess levy is certified by the Department of Municipal Affairs and, of course, the electors of the financial town meeting. So we're in a little bit of a conundrum here. We don't have a lot of guidance, but Jeff and I agree, feel like it's our obligation to advise you of this and put it before this body to see what you want to do about it.
That's something I'd like to say.
Sure.
I've been coming to the town financial meeting since I was 17 years old. I'm 70 now. It's always been that the taxpayer of this town make the decision on how much money we wanted to spend. Whether you wanted to exceed what the budget committee recommended, or whether you wanted to cut what the budget committee recommended. It's the people. This is our meeting. This is our town. We shouldn't be tying people's hands or trying to lead them to vote one way or the other. People in this town are very intelligent. That's all I get to say.
I don't know, you said 17 years. This law, 4452, has only been on the books. This is, I think, the third year of the tax cap. I could be wrong about that. It's just 3 or 4, so these issues really haven't been resolved yet, but it is definitely something new compared to what you've seen in the past. There's no question about that, because there was no statutory cap prior to 3 or 4 years ago, or at least not this one.
But then on the other hand, there is the matter of the state law, which is very specific, in spite of what some would say, that any levy pursuant to subsection D of this section in excess of the percentage increase specified in subsection A, which this year is 4.5%, shall be approved by an affirmative vote at least 4/5 of the full membership of the governing body of the city or town, or in the case of a city or town having a financial town meeting, which is us, the majority of the electors present and voting at the town financial meeting shall also approve the excess levy. That seems pretty specific to me. So what it boils down to is, who's the governing body of the city or town? Because the state law is very specific. It says, if you want to exceed the 4.5% cap, you got to take a 4/5 vote of the governing body and then have it approved by the majority of the electors. That's pretty specific. The state is talking to us.
Yeah, that's why, you know, I thought that to the extent language is very important. I don't want to be in a situation where we're declaring that we are the governing body or trying, you know, anybody saying we're overreaching or anything. I'm just, you know, I feel like if there's a vote that this body is supposed to take, I'm putting it out here at your pleasure to consider it.
What does the town council said about who's the governing body? Or do they in fact admit to being the governing body?
They, there've been so many meetings on this going back to January, but they have not adopted a policy.
Okay, so no one is the governing body. I know last year we got a note from the state that said the budget committee was the governing body from the state board of revenue. Did we not?
Well, I think if you look at one of these papers, the part that says Part 3 in the tax cap modification, it acknowledges that there is a disagreement in interpretation, and they suggested clarifying language. So I don't know if I would say so much that they have definitely come down on the side of the town council, the budget committee, one or the other. They just want clarifying language.
So at present, we don't know who the governing body is. Is it the town council or is it the budget committee? We don't know, correct?
We don't know. So that's why I think the to the extent language is very important if it's something that we want to do.
So what exactly, this memorandum,
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
Is there a question on our part, since the majority of the Budget Committee voted not to exceed the cap in submitting a budget to the town? Then what is the issue? We're not requesting to exceed the cap. So we're going to the voters with a budget that does not exceed the cap. So what is the issue? I don't understand the issue.
Yeah.
We're not asking to exceed the cap. When I read in the paper, neither is the town council. So we're holding a meeting with taxpayers to tell them, this is what the Budget Committee voted, this is your budget, do you want to accept it or not?
Well, the budget committee is definitely not voting to exceed the cap.
Right.
The town council's requested budget certainly exceeds the cap, and it exceeds the cap once more once you combine it with the school
But
committee's
what is being
requested budget.
submitted to the taxpayers on that day, May 8th?
They will receive our budget as the recommended budget and the town council and the school committee budget as the requested budget. The issue is whether or not the state will come back with some type of determination of eligibility or a certification of some sort, which they have not responded yet.
Okay, then, under the charter, we've performed our duties and submitted a budget under the cap for that meeting. I think that's
Right.
all the requirement is in the charter.
That is the requirement in the charter, but this is not a charter requirement, this is a state law requirement. So if we were the governing body, then we'd have to go from there. One option would be to reconvene, and maybe that's the better way to go. Or if you don't want to reconvene, then we can do something now.
Well, it appears we're not going to resolve it tonight, so why don't we just move on with our...
Yeah, I mean, unless somebody wants to move this, then I think I would kindly ask that the discussion be reflected in the minutes that we discussed this matter, and I'm definitely okay with that, but
I would like to know, what exactly is this resolution saying? It says that, assuming that the Tiverton Budget Committee is the governing body, it hereby approves by the affirmative vote at least 4/5 of its full membership any excess levy. So what we're saying is that we approve by a 4/5 vote here, assuming we are the governing body,
Right.
we approve that we can exceed the 4.5% budget increase, anything over 4.5%.
But that's if and only if the state certifies it and the financial town meeting electors certify it. And I also wouldn't say it's not making a declaration that we are the governing body. I mean, if this committee wants to do that, that's a whole other conversation, but
So if we were to if we make a recommendation, someone were to move this, or correction, make a motion that this be adopted, and it was seconded, and we voted on it, and it passed by a supermajority, then we would be giving permission, we would be satisfying the state requirement that you must have a 4/5 vote to break the 4.5% tax cap. Is that correct?
Right, except, of course, we don't have our full membership here either, so another option would be to table this or postpone it if you don't have a problem with that, but I feel like it would be remiss if I didn't advise everybody.
We got a quorum?
We do have a quorum, but we do have a quorum.
Okay, I make a motion that this motion be adopted.
Sure.
Do you have a copy of that motion?
I
I don't believe it's been distributed.
happen to have one, but I need it back. Tom, do you want to read that? I'm happy to read it. Now, I can read that. So the motion before the committee is that whereas the Tiverton Budget Committee has recommended...
I have 4 more copies here.
Oh, that's right, you had the extra copies. Sorry.
Did you want these to go to someone in particular?
Even on the agenda, you can't vote on it. Mr. Chairman, that's not even on the agenda. We should not be taking a vote on this.
Do you have the agenda, Candy?
Yes, but I want it back. It's the only one I have.
Discussion and potential vote pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 4452. So, okay, I'll go ahead and read this
You're going to
in
vote
full.
for the 45-2, but that's has nothing to do with the resolution.
Has the motion been seconded?
Not yet.
Would the audience prefer to hear the motion or see if it is seconded? Because I'm happy to entertain either way. Okay. No, this motion would only approve an excess levy if we're the governing body, which we don't know because nobody's told us, if the state has certified breaking the cap, which it hasn't, and if the financial town meeting electors, but obviously we haven't had a financial town meeting, approve the levy. So it states, whereas the Tiverton Budget Committee has recommended to the electors a budget for fiscal year 2010-2011, which does not exceed the 4.50% statutory tax cap established by Rhode Island General Law 44-5-2B. And whereas the town administrator has sought a determination from the Department of Revenue and/or the Auditor General of the state of Rhode Island purportedly to determine what excess levy the town of Tiverton might be eligible to impose. And whereas Rhode Island General Law 44-5-2E states, and I quote, any levy pursuant to subsection D of the section in excess of the percentage increase specified in subsection A of this section shall be approved by the affirmative vote of at least 4/5 of the full membership of the governing body of the city or town, or in the case of a city or town having a financial town meeting, the majority of the electors present and voting at the town financial meeting shall also approve the excess levy. Now it is therefore resolved that to the extent that the Tiverton Budget Committee is considered to be the governing body for purposes of Rhode Island General Law 44-5-2E, it hereby approves such approval only effective as approved by the affirmative motion of at least 4/5 of its full membership, any excess levy for fiscal year 2010-2011, which may be certified by state officials so long as a majority of electors present and voting at a financial town meeting shall also approve excess levy. So that is That's the motion. I'll go ahead and second it so that we can move on to the public hearing.
Let me ask, what does, you're aware, what do the terms "to the extent that the Tiverton Budget Committee is considered the governing body," what does that mean?
Well, I mean, you know, I just,
He's not sure.
what that means, if we're not the governing body, then it's sort of no harm, no foul.
So nobody knows who the governing body is, but assuming we are...
But if the state comes back, we don't have a policy from the town council, we don't have anything back from the state. If the state comes back and says, hey, you're the governing body, budget committee, since you're the only committee that reviews the school committee and the town council together,
I think we stay under the cap, submit a budget.
then we will have fulfilled our duty to take this vote. If the state comes back and says, no, it's the town council, or if the state comes back and says nobody has to take this vote, which is the interpretation of some people, then this vote would be nothing because of the "to the extent" language.
Got it.
Originally, doesn't make sense.
So I'm trying to navigate us through some waters that are uncharted and make sure that this committee has been at least fully advised as best as we can. Obviously, it's not a very clear issue. So I'd like to move this if there's any further discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have a question. I'm a little confused. We, as the Budget Committee, on the majority, voted to stay under the cap. And if I read this correctly, now we're saying we're going to go along with exceeding the cap if the financial town meeting says we go over the cap. Isn't that a little bit contradictory?
I totally agree. I'm
Yeah,
just trying to make
that's-
sure we fulfill our statutory. I don't want anybody coming back and saying that the Budget Committee failed to meet when it was supposed to meet, and I don't want anybody here saying that we're the governing body when we're not. So I've tried to get it just right, that to the extent that we're the governing body, if we're the governing body, we've taken a vote that we're required to take, and that's what I'm trying
Rob, do you have a second for this?
to.
Seconded?
Yeah, he did.
Can we move the motion?
Is there any objection to moving the question?
Who seconded that?
I second it, or I'm happy to second it if there's any other.
Okay.
Okay, hearing no objection, the question has been moved. All those in favor of this resolution, please raise your hand. All those opposed, please raise your hand. And
So, wait, could it,
I'm
Mr. Chairman?
sorry,
Mr.
ma'am,
Chairman.
first of all,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Could we get the vote before we
Yeah, we're-
take questions from the audience? I do not have the vote.
we're in the middle of a vote, and let's complete the vote, and I'm happy to discuss this afterwards.
Okay,
so-
so could you review who voted, please?
Yeah, I'd actually like to retake the vote. Is there any objection to retaking the vote? Will all those in favor, please raise your hand. Would all those opposed, please raise your hand.
Okay, so
It's unanimous.
that's everybody,
I'm abstaining.
you're abstaining?
Yes.
And everybody else is voting nay?
You're
Thank
voting
you.
nay as well?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry. So it's 7:15. We are rolling right into a public hearing. I'm certainly happy to delay the public hearing for a reasonable time, and I'm happy to try to explain this any further if you'd like, or we can catch up afterwards.
So, no, my question is, when we all abstained, is that you do not agree that the townspeople should have the right to vote to override, if so? Is that what you've just decided, that you don't want the townspeople to right, or am I not understanding this? Because I just heard this morning that they're closing our school, Fort Barton, and there's a lot of children, my children included. And it is, to me, a travesty that we have 1 week where no one even knows. I heard it. Not a single parent knows that they're going to close the school and move 4th graders in with 8th graders. And I know that's what the budget has proposed, that's what I've heard. And I think as soon as the townspeople hear, there's going to be a lot of people who want a right to vote for what we do, or to reassess, is there something else? Could we take trash collection out of the budget? That might save it. Can we do something else or reassess? And this is, to me, if we think long term, we have children in a new school. We made a choice not to do one big school. We made a choice to renovate 2 small schools. So now we're going to shut down a new school, but still have to pay the bond, still have to pay the maintenance, still have to pay to keep it up, and move all the kids into a smaller school. And that's what I heard today. I don't know if it's true, but I believe that that is a poor way to go. And by the way, with all the new developments in town, I see these developments and new housing coming up that are really geared towards families. If we actually fill those houses with families, you're going to need to open a new school in another couple of years. And so to me, to be short-sighted and cut the school for this year, and to have these 4th graders with 8th graders just breaks my heart. And imagine when all these people with 3rd grade children learn their children in a few months will get on a bus with an 8th grader. And the fact that no one knows about it, believe me, that's just going to crush them when they hear. So I want to know what this motion is about. Is it saying we cannot have the right to participate in this process as taxpayers, or can we?
This motion that just failed, this motion did not pass, would have approved an excess levy if 3 things were to happen. First of all, somebody would have to say we're the governing body, which nobody has done. Second, the state of Rhode Island would have had to certify an excess levy, which the town council, and again, I have to be neutral here, some people say that they have applied to break that cap, but the town council says, and they've insisted that they have not applied to break the cap. They're just trying to see what the taxpayers are eligible for. To my knowledge, and I haven't done this 30 years, but to my knowledge, that's never happened before. And I talked to the new person that's running this office that just happened to have started this week, and we're hoping to meet on this next week.
Would that be a public meeting?
I don't believe so. That's at their discretion. I certainly have no problem with that, but I have a feeling it's going to be in her office in Providence, and we'll all be scurrying to be there. I have suggested to her that it be open to any of the committee members who want to attend, since I know that she was contacted by a town council committee member that was not an officer of that committee. I don't know if it would be open to the public. The third thing that would have to happen is that the majority of the electors at the FTM would happen. Those 3 things would have to happen. If all 3 of those things happened, then this committee would not have approved the excess levy. Not to say that this committee couldn't reconvene and reconsider, which, as far as I know, also has not happened. Again, trying to be fair here, this has been under discussion with the town council since January, and they have not adopted a policy on this. As far as the other points that you raised, which I think are very good points, personally, I was not aware of that either. The committee has not been presented anything from the school committee. We stopped our deliberations in April. That's sort of spilling over to the public hearing. So what I would like to go ahead and do is ask the secretary if there are, do you want to approve the minutes from this meeting right now, or
No.
Or at the end of the-
We cannot do that. So maybe at the end.
at the end of the
but
public hearing?
Maybe.
At the end of the public
I'm not
hearing.
sure that
Okay.
that'll be the case, but,
Okay. I mean, we can legally, you mean as far as
Right.
getting it done? Okay.
Right.
I don't want to press you. So what I would like to, so the secretary does not have any further minutes to approve, so I would suggest we adjourn and take a 5-minute recess and then come back and open up the public hearing, and I guarantee we'll be talking about the issues with the schools. Is there any objection to adjourning? Hearing none, the meeting has adjourned, and we'll take a 5-minute recess. I apologize for the delay. We'll